Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's time for the closing one-on-one. And we managed to gather some wonderful insights and thoughts from all of our speakers. And it's only befitting that we now make the way for the road forward, creating effective and customer-centric digital strategies. This evening, we're joined by Dhananjay Tambe, Chief Executive Officer, CH Technologies Limited. And leading this specific session, we have with us Ashish, Vora, President and Business Head, Market Intelligence and Analytics, CRISIL. So on that note, let me quickly bring on board our set of speakers here for our very final session. And it's time to get this final session started.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, and it's to be a part of this forum, and it's really a pleasure to be here. And Mr. Tambe, sir, you want to maybe start off by just giving a synopsis of what we've heard a little bit, over the past couple of hours, and maybe share your experiences, because you've got a phenomenal set of experiences with your background. Maybe share a couple of them, and then we can maybe just get into an interaction.
Hey, thank you, Ashish. In fact, as we all know, the past 2 years, we have seen phenomenal changes in consumer behavior. I mean, if in 2019, I would have told anyone that there will come a day in this country when you will be able to make payment digitally to your chai wala, to your sabji wali, to your rickshaw wala. People would have scoffed at the idea. But the pandemic has changed everything. Now, today, I do not find a shop which does not accept payments digitally. In fact, the first thing that you see in the shop is the ubiquitous QR code. And I'd never thought that the QR code would become so popular in this country as a mode of acceptance of payments. And this is something, which has become a sort of a de facto standard or a mode of receiving payments by all and sundry. And this is regardless of the kind of merchant, the type of merchant, the size of merchant, or the location of the merchant, right? Now, with this kind of change that has happened in the Indian banking scenario, payment scenario, and especially, the acceptance of digital by the common man. Now, this is also something, which gives a tremendous amount of opportunity to the banks to further improve their customer service. So customer centricity is the key factor, which drives any organization for that matter. But in case of banks, the fundamental advantage that they have is that they sit on a huge amount of data pertaining to their customers. And those banks which will be able to make use of this data in a manner that will enable them to improve their customer service, not only the customer service, but the customer experience in general. They are the ones, who will be the leaders in the days to come. So let me give you an example. Say, for instance, the traditional way of lending was that the customer had to come to the branch, he had to make an application on a paper form, then that application would be assessed by somebody, and after assessment, there was a whole lot of loan disbursement process. So the whole process could easily take at the minimum 2 or 3 days. Now, and of course, the most important point there was the underwriting part of it, right? The credit assessment part of it. So the credit assessment itself would take time. Now, banks have a huge amount of data, and this digital payments data that is coming in, that is further adding to the huge repository of data that the banks already had on the system. Now, combine all of this, put analytics to work, and use artificial intelligence and machine learning, because this volume of data cannot be analyzed, without the use of AI. So put all of this in place, and now you can create the kind of products that were hitherto not possible. Say, for instance, many of the banks, they have made good use of this, and they have created pre-approved personal loans, which are available fully online. See, just a couple of years ago, you would never have thought that there will come a day, when we will be able to take a loan 24/7, 365 days in a year, sitting in the comfort of our home. But today that has become possible because of this kind of use of data that has been made. So similarly, the kind of product offering. See, today, you receive the kind of SMSs or notifications about products which might or might not be relevant to you. Whereas tomorrow, if you do proper analysis of the data, of the consumer behavior, then it is possible to make the kind of offerings which will be very specific to that particular person. And therefore, the likelihood that that offering will get converted into business will become that much higher. So, and the customer will also feel happy because he is being shown or he is being reached out to for relevant offers rather than all and sundry kind of offers. So you see, the banking of the future is going to be very heavily dependent upon the way the data is used, the data is analyzed, and basis that the way the products are designed, and basis that the customer experience is changed.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. Even my experience has really shown me, and I'm trying to simplify stuff, if you may want to call it that there are really three pillars on which, one builds out a customer-centric digital strategy. One is that, there has to be a tangible outcome at the end of that customer journey, because the customer is obviously looking for something at the end. May it be a pot of gold, the ubiquitous pot of gold, or whatever it is. But you have to have something tangible that will arrive or that will be available at the end of the journey. The second thing, like you correctly said, sir, is that there has to be a digital analytical component within that journey itself, because there is just so much of data, both in terms of variety, in terms of veracity, in terms of city that is there in the market out there. One has to leverage that data in order to be able to provide a digital experience for the customer. If you don't leverage that, you're really making it difficult, or I would say non-friction. It should be really frictionless. Otherwise, what you're really doing is putting a lot of friction points, which don't make it a seamless journey for all practical purposes. And the third thing is it has to be portable. It should be intuitive. It should work across apps. There should be absolutely no re-inputs. There should be nudges available, during that journey, so that at the end of the day, when the customer walks away with whatever it is that he or she is doing, they walk away with a very happy feeling of having a, satisfied sort of experience of, using a particular application or doing, availing of a particular service. So I think that's really become, these are the three pillars that you're really trying to build out the entire strategy on. And to your example, it's really a lot of payments data, doing analytics with payments in order to be able to give credit out to the customer, being able to do a little bit of, give an app so that the entire journey is seamless and frictionless. And obviously the end objective, which is, giving somebody a loan at the end of the day immediately into his or her account, so that, they kind of have a tangible benefit out of that entire experience. So I think these are the three tenets on which, each and every customer digital journey, should really be built.
Right, absolutely,
Yeah. The other thought, the other thing that I keep hearing when you speak to a lot of people, and of course not, people who are not very closely associated with this industry, but when you generally speak to the layman, they think that it is a technology service. They think that it is all technology that, delivers all of this. In reality, it is actually the customer that is the catalyst for this change. It is a customer or the end user who is driving this change, to use technology to a particular, to achieve a particular means. So that's one big, if you may want to call it, myth that is sitting in people's minds, that, this is all technology. It's, nothing got to do with, how you want to serve your customer or the service that you really provide. So, so that's just, something that I think I guess over a period of time, as and when, things mature, you will see that, mindset changing and people start getting aligned more towards, the customer experience rather than just the technology that is, being really put out, from a usability perspective. Yeah.
Right. In fact, Ashish, the technology piece is important, but what is more important than the technology, than mere technology, is the way the technology is used. So you see, it is what is important is not the flute, but who's playing the flute. So whether it's a Hari Prasad Chaurasia who's playing the flute, or it's somebody like you and me who's trying to play the flute, the flute remains the same. It's who plays the flute is what matters. So you see here again, how technology is to be used is, see, ultimately the customer wants simplified journey. I'll give you a simple example. So during my childhood, there was nothing called a remote for a television. Of course, there was no need of a remote for a television because there was only one channel, Doordarshan. But still, we did not have a remote. And when remote finally came, at that time, I thought that perhaps this is just something to make you lazy. But then today you find that there is a use for that. I mean, it has actually made life much simpler. Otherwise, every time going to the TV and changing the channel by pressing a button on the TV would have made very difficult, when you have a large number of channels. So see, technology does make things simpler. So similarly, you see, today, many of the mobile banking apps, they allow you to log in using face recognition. Now, that's a very good use of the face recognition technology, which is inherent in those operating systems, whether it's Android or whether it's iOS, right? And that technology has been used in order to enable you to log in into the mobile banking application, which has made life much simpler. See, because otherwise, just think of it. And if I can take the name, so let's take Google Pay or say Paytm, right? Now, if you were to go to a shop and you wanted to make a payment, and then you had to every time input your PIN for invoking the app, that much more time would have been lost.
Absolutely.
But by using this technology, by just enabling that face recognition to log in into the app, your journey has been made more streamlined, far more convenient than what it would have been otherwise. These kind of uses of technology are what will endear the customer to the banks. And those banks which are able to exploit such technologies better and design journeys on the basis of this technology, because these technologies are available to everyone. Absolutely. But then those banks, who are able to design their journeys, customer journeys, in such a way that it, as you said, frictionless, streamlined, convenient, seamless, those kind of journeys. So many things are talking about the digital payments, especially acceptance of digital payments by the small traders, the kind of pathariwalas, as we call them, the traders on the street. Now, this opens up a huge vista for the banks to do lending to a segment, to whom they would not have otherwise been able to lend with any degree of confidence. See, they were being forced to lend, let us say, under the government schemes like Mudra and all that, right? Absolutely. But then, the NPA percentages in those kind of schemes was pretty high. Whereas now, if you use analytics properly, and if you make use of this data properly, you can find out the right kind of customer, you can target those customers, you can find out what kind of, what amount of loans to be given to them, what should be the repayment period, what kind of repayment schedule should be set for them depending upon the nature of their business. All of this becomes possible with the use of data analytics, and therefore as we know that the small traders in the country, small merchants in the country, they are in several tens of millions. So a huge new segment of customers become open to the banks, and this kind of lending, I believe, is something that will be of great benefit, because as we all know that microfinance institutions, they build their entire portfolio on such kind of small value loans. So these loans, they have got a very good return on them. So this will become a good source of revenue for the banks. And in the days to come, this will be a very good new line of business, a new profitable line of business for the banks. So, and similarly, if you look at many other areas, say for instance, NPA detection. So you will be able to make predictions. So if you use predictive analytics properly, you will be able to make predictions regarding what kind of loans or what type of loans or which borrowers are likely to turn NPAs over the next some months, and therefore take proactive measures. So similarly, fraud detection. Now you can develop proper fraud engines, and basis that you can find out what kind of transactions are likely suspicious and prevent those transactions upfront. And that will improve the confidence of the customers on the digital modes of making payments, right?
Absolutely.
So therefore, these are the measures which I believe that will be taken by banks going forward, and that is where their ability to have to improve upon the customer journeys and customer experience in general, that will improve.
So just to actually add to that, it's the banks that are also doing something. So there is a lot of activity on the private side, but let's not also forget the amount of work that is happening on the public infrastructure side when it comes to digital. With the whole India stack, which has come to a phenomenal amount of level of maturity when it comes to the entire eKYC, when it comes to providing a settlement system to be able to facilitate the transactions of the UPI network. And now one of the other initiatives that they're really running, which is Open, which really allows banks to participate which basically allows the banks to participate on loans which are originated by fintechs in that environment using analytics and digital journeys. That really gives the ability to to some extent it's really providing a level playing field for everybody to come in there and put in their apps or put in their solutions and reap the benefits of getting everybody on the ecosystem into, or getting access to everybody in the ecosystem when it either comes to lending or for that matter verification, or for that matter settlement. So I think that's a phenomenal driver of what we've really seen over the last few years. That's been one big thing. The other thing that I'm seeing, sir, is that I think the last 2 or 3 years, the last 3 or 4 years have really been centered towards payments and making payments seamless in the whole ecosystem. I'm seeing that shift now to credit. Like you said, a lot of analytics is now coming out of that payments network to, facilitate giving out credit. So there are adjacencies that are really being found on, maybe something that was being done, a couple of years back. I'll just take a couple of minutes on, I was looking at a platform the other day, specifically for the MSME segment. And it was a platform that really sits on top of their accounting platforms. And what it really does is that it consumes a lot of the billing or the invoice data. And then it really goes out and then interacts or sends over email or WhatsApp or any other mode invoices and bills to the debtors, and then follows up on those invoices at particular frequencies. Allows for dispute resolution on the invoices, and when the payments come in, it really does an automated reconciliation. So it's a service that is seamlessly available for the SME just by the click of a button, without having to do, as something which is traditionally manual. But the adjacency that is really coming out is now there is invoice level data that has been captured. So you have the DNA of every invoice is available. And that is something that the MSME is actually coming to organizations like CRISIL and say, listen, now I have all this data. Can you help me grade it? Which will then allow me to go to a bank and say, listen, this is my past experience with this counterparty. Are you willing to now put money, give me a loan? So the thin file, the proverbial thin file, is becoming into a thick file because of, a digitization that was done on the financial aspect of his commercial chain, really. So it's multiple new avenues, new areas are actually coming up, and new uses are coming out of the amount of data that's really being captured, and the use of analytics and the public infrastructure in the environment these days.
No, that's absolutely right, Ashish. In fact, one of the wonderful use cases that can be built, or there is an attempt to build it, is to use the GST data.
Absolutely.
Because that's a very, very highly reliable source of data. And you can use it to find out the turnover of the entity. And basis that, you can then decide upon the amount of credit to be dispensed to that entity. So basically, essentially what the country has got all the now tools available, right? So whether it is GST or whether it is UPI, and now of course that UPI has been extended to non-smartphones, the feature phones also, that will further increase. I mean, one of the estimates is that the numbers could potentially increase by about 40 crores, right? So even if it doesn't increase by 40 crores, even if it is half of that, you get another 20 crore users into the system, right? Which is again very, very huge. And all of this data, if it is put to proper use, then lending can be made much simpler than it is currently. See, in fact, if you see, I'll give you a very simple example of how digitization has changed. So during the good old days, my childhood, if you wanted to reserve a train berth, you had to go to the railway station. You had to go to the railway station, fill up a form, stand in the queue when the reservation counter opened, and then only you could make a reservation, right? Whereas today you can make a reservation 24/7 sitting at the comfort of your home through not only the IRCTC app, which is of course the most popular one, but through any of the other apps which use the IRCTC APIs. Now, this is the kind of change that is needed to be brought about. There's an existing business process, but the way you digitize it in order to make it more consumer centric, to improve the customer experience, to improve the convenience and the convenience of the customers, right? So this is, and if this happens in case of lending, which I believe will make a huge difference, because today availability of credit, especially for these smaller borrowers, is something which is very, very important. See, India does not have the kind of credit cards or the population of credit cards which, let us say, the Western world has, right? So the Western world lives on credit cards, but Indians haven't been living on credit cards because the way the credit card availability is assessed, so many people don't become eligible. But banks can fill up this gap, and if they do it, then I believe that it will be a great boon to to our economy, because that will spur the demand in the economy like never before, and that will further improve the downstream activities, like manufacturing and all that. So it will be a benefit to the country as a whole, to the GDP as a whole. And of course, the customer experience also in the process improves, because getting loans digitally any day is much better. I mean, those of us who have renewed our driving license digitally know the difference between doing the thing digitally and going to the RTO office and getting it done. So this is something which will be a game changer. And I believe this is the area, where all banks are now focusing. Customer experience, that's one simple word, and customer experience is all based upon the way you design your customer journeys. And customer journeys, as you have very correctly pointed out in the beginning, they have to be seamless, streamlined, and done in a manner, which is absolutely frictionless. So the customer does not, when he wants to get that service, he doesn't feel that he has to make any effort to get that service. So this is the direction into which all the banks must move forward. And those which do it are the ones, which are going to be the leaders, and the rest of them will all be the laggards, or the followers, right? So this is the way the scenario is now emerging.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm just being mindful of time, sir. I thank you very much for your inputs. There's a lot that you've really tried to cover in a very short period of time, and I'm sure we are just at the right at the, I would say, at the bottom of the pyramid at this point in time. There is a fair amount of headroom available or runway available to really take this to the next level. And I know that over the last few hours, people have heard of a lot of newer technologies, a lot of use cases of how people or how companies are really thinking to be able to take this really to the next level. Yeah. So it's an evolving field, and I think, but one thing remains the core, to whatever it is that all of us do, which is to make sure that the customer has a great experience, which eventually will ensure stickiness and loyalty and hence value for the organization that's offering it. Yeah. So once again, thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for listening in, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashish, and thank you, ET Now, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashish. Thank you very much, Mr. Dhananjay, for beautifully sharing. In fact, I think we managed to capture a gamut of insights with that closing set of words as well. So thank you very much, Ashish, for joining us this evening and for capturing that as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, yes, we do come to the end of the summit, and I do hope that all of you managed to gather some wonderful insights from all of our speakers thus far, the kind of sessions that we've had, right from the fireside to the panel to the keynotes as well. But before we call it a wrap, it's also, I would say, important for me to once again thank our partners, because it's thanks to their support that we're able to bring something as spectacular as this for all of you. or for that matter, create something as experiential for all of you. So we're going to take a minute once again to thank our presenting partner, Kyndryl, and the summit has been co-powered by Induspace, Exotel, and Dell Technologies. We'd like to thank our cloud partner, Amazon Internet Services, our platinum partners, NetApp, Reddington, Databricks, gold partners, Snowflake, Madhyam, powered by Biz2XR, Resultix, Nugent Software, and Tech Data. We'd also like to thank our associate partners, Talisma and SUSE, supporting association, FIDC, Finance Industry Development Council, and media partner, CIO Review India, knowledge partner, ET Insights, and the summit has been brought to you by ET Unwired. With that, I am Kavya Archavli signing off for now. I do hope you've had a wonderful time listening to our amazing speakers. But until we meet next, we hope to also catch up with all of you actually in person. That's the plan, hopefully really soon. But until then, take care and see you soon.